Hi, Salma from Nordcraft here, and welcome back to the Learn Nordcraft video series. In this lesson, we're going to build a Keanu Whoa catalogue.
Whoa!
You'll learn about getting data from APIs, creating dynamic pages using data from an API, using the repeat formula, and using the formula editor to concatenate data and format dates, and a little bit more. If you're new to Nordcraft and you haven't watched the previous lessons, I would highly recommend starting from the beginning. But if you're up to speed, go to the Learn Nordcraft repository on GitHub, find the resources for lesson 2, I've put the link in the description, and let's do it. Welcome to Learn Nordcraft lesson 2. This is the Keanu Whoa catalogue. It's what we're going to make today. We have a list of movies in which Keanu Reeves said whoa, and we're getting that data from an API. And each one of these links goes to a dynamic page. So if we click on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, we'll see the name of the film, the year of release, a video of when Keanu said whoa in the film, the line he said, the timestamp, the movie poster, and some metadata about the movie as well. If I click on Toy Story 4, for example, you'll see the same page layout, but with different data. And we're using a different API call to get this rich data about each movie as well. So these are the docs for the API that we're going to be using, the Keanu Reeves Whoa API. I'm going to click on the full API docs here that you're going to need. We're going to be using the random Whoa API and passing in the movie name as a parameter. We're also going to be using the All Movies API to populate that list of movies in which Keanu says whoa on the homepage. So we're ready to start building. Head over to Nordcraft, go to the dashboard, and let's click Create App. And just as in lesson 1, we are going to create a project from the blank template. So just as before in lesson 1, we're going to delete that placeholder content and we are ready to begin. So in order to make it a little bit easier to see as we're building out our pages, I do just want to change the background color of the main element first on our canvas. If you click on the main HTML element and if the style panel is not visible, then you can press S to show it. I'm going to make the width 100% of this, and as usual I'm going to add a max width just like we did in lesson 1 to constrain the width of the content so it doesn't look too wide. I'm going to make sure that it's display flex and give it a flex gap of 2 rems, and I'm going to give it a margin left and right of auto to center that content in the page. And I'm going to give it a margin top of 3 rems as well, and you'll see why later. And then I'm just going to give it a background color of white. And as I mentioned in lesson 1, you can just use CSS named colors if you like. And just so we can visualize this container right now, I'm just going to give it a height of 100%. And so we can see we have a nice white background on which to build our content out. Now, I know I threw you in the deep end a little bit on the style panel in lesson 1, so I just want to take a couple of minutes to go through some of the features of the style panel. The CSS properties that you have access to are grouped in kind of logical groups. We've got size, layout, text, background, etc. You can collapse and expand these groups to give you more advanced options and more obscure properties. And if you're not sure where a CSS property is located, you can use the search bar. And if you say, look at font family, you can use the arrows or click on font family. When you press enter, it will open that panel for that particular CSS property. So if you're not sure where anything is on the style panel, you can use that search property to find it. I was talking a lot in lesson 1 about how this is just CSS, and if you use this CSS panel button down in the bottom right, you can actually view the generated CSS for the component that you've selected or the element that you've selected. And this is just what's going to appear in the DevTools inspector in a browser. If you need, you can also copy and paste CSS directly from the style panel if you want to use it on another element. And you can use these buttons here. You've got the copy button and the paste button in the bottom right there. And that should be everything. I do want to bring your attention to the animation editor, which we are going to use right at the end of this lesson. You can add animations by clicking the plus button here. It's really, really cool. I do have another video that I will link below as well that shows you the animation editor and the true power of it, where I build a like button with animated hearts and etc. But we'll get to this later, but I just wanted to highlight that because it's one of the key cool features of the Nordcraft editor. So the first thing we're going to do is add an image to the page. We're going to add Keanu's head at the top of the page. We're going to press I to open the HTML image catalog and search for IMG to embed an image. And let's press enter. And let's press A to get to the attributes tab. So this alt is going to be Keanu Reeves. So we're going to grab the source attribute for this image from the Learn Nordcraft repository lesson 2 resources. So these are the resources for lesson 2 on GitHub in the Learn Nordcraft repository. And I'm just going to grab this URL and click to copy. And back in the editor, I'm just going to paste that source attribute in there. And again, we've got this warning symbol telling us we don't have a width and height attribute on our image. So we're going to add width and height as attributes by clicking the plus button. And the dimensions of this image, the width is 502 and the height is 633. Now I'm just going to press S to go to the style tab for that image, and I'm going to set a width of 200 pixels on the image and a height of auto. So now we have a kind of a smaller image, which won't take up too much of the page. So now we're going to add an H1. So click on the main element, press I to open the catalog and search for H1 and press enter. I'm going to change the text for the H1 heading to Keanu Whoa catalogue. Now we're going to have to change the color of this text. And we're going to go over to the style tab for the H1. And right now I'm just going to turn this black. I'm going to change the font size to be 2 rems, and we're going to make it bold. Now on the production finished app, I did do something a little bit wild with the title styling of this page and the other page, but we're not going to do that in this tutorial. But if you do want to see how it's done, you can view the finished project and inspect the DOM and see how that was put together, or you can open lesson 2 in the Nordcraft editor and copy and paste the CSS over to your project. Just going to click on main again and press I to add the next HTML element, which is an H2. And we're just going to give the user a little bit of an instruction here. Pick a movie to see a whoa. And we're going to make that as well black by going to the style panel for the H2, clicking on the color icon, and let's just type black. Now in the finished project as well, whoa is in italics. And the way I did that was inside the H2, I added a span. And inside that, I added a text node. And I'll add whoa into the span. I'll remove whoa from the initial H2 text. And I will use the style tab to make this span font italic. Now, as you can see, this text is a little bit close. It's like we don't really have a space just yet. So I'm going to make sure to add a space here at the end of the H2. And if we make sure to select the H2 and search in the style panel for white space, if we change that to pre, it should look a little more how we want with that correct spacing in between the non-italic text and the italic text. So now we're ready to call our first API to get the data for this list of links. We'll render out the name of a film, and we'll also generate a link to a dynamic page that we're going to set up later on. This is the documentation for the Movies API. You'll see here is the URL we need to call. So I'm going to copy this URL here. You can also find the URL for the Movies API on GitHub in the Learn Nordcraft Lesson 2 resources. So I'm going to click to copy this API URL. So with nothing selected in the Nordcraft editor, you'll be able to see this API panel on the right. So to add a new API, click the plus button. Now what you can do here is just paste the full URL that you just copied and press continue. So what's happened here is that the Nordcraft editor has split out the API URL into identifying the different path parameters that were split in the URL. You've got your base URL here and two path parameters, woes and movie. Let's name this API. So where it says new API, delete that and let's call that movies. And what you might have noticed already is that the Nordcraft editor has called this API and actually returned the data that we need to render that list of movies. If you want to recall the API or test out any different configuration or query parameters or something in the future, you can press the play button here, which will call the API again and show you the JSON response. So this page already has the data ready to use on it. So we're going to render this in an unordered list. So I'm going to click on main again, and I'm going to press I to open the HTML catalog, and I'm going to search for UL unordered list. And then I'm going to press I again to add an li for a list item. And then inside that, we're going to add an anchor tag, a link. So I'm going to search for A and press enter. And inside this anchor tag is where we're going to display our list of links. But we're going to do that by using the repeat formula. And using the repeat formula saves us having to write out a list item with a link inside it as many times as we need. The repeat formula takes care of it for us. So click on the li and go to the Attributes tab by pressing A, and you'll see this repeat function here, and click on FX. And here you have the movie data already kind of in the app itself. You can click on Movies, Data, and already we have this output here. Now, nothing's going to show on the page yet, as you can see, but we're going to change that right now by clicking on the text node inside the anchor tag. And if you click on the text FX button here, you'll find that you'll have an item available to use. And there is the first item inside the list coming back from the API. What we need to do now is we just need to turn this black by going to the style panel, typing in black, and there is our list of movies from the API. I'm just going to center this text as it is on the production site. I'm going to click on the UL. I'm going to go down to the text area on the style panel, expand that, and click on the center align button. Now, currently, this list of items are not links. So we're going to set up the link on the anchor tag, but that's going to have to be a formula as well, because we're going to need to construct it from the data that's coming back from the API. Now, the only data that's coming back from the API is a list of strings. Now, as we know, we can't have spaces in URLs. So we're going to need to use the URL encode formula inside the formula editor in order to construct a dynamic link to take us off to a page about that specific movie. So if you click on the anchor tag again, and if you press A for attributes, we're going to use this formula button next to the href to construct that URL. The URL for our dynamic pages is going to be /movie/ the movie name, and that movie name is going to be URL encoded. So the first thing we're going to do is select the concatenate formula, which joins together two or more values. The first value in concatenate is going to be /movie/. And the next value is going to be that dynamic value from the API, the item value that's being repeated. So if you add a new value to concatenate using the plus button, click on the plus to the left of it, and let's get the item. Now, right now, you can see that this still has the spaces in, and that's not going to work in a URL. First of all, we're going to lowercase that item by clicking on the plus button to the right of item and searching for lowercase. And you'll see the result already as we move through the nodes, and it's updating in real time. You'll see now we have this lowercase here. And then we're going to encode the URI component. And you'll see now we have more of a properly formed URL. /movie/babes %20 in, etc. And this is the URL that we're going to use to power the dynamic pages. If we preview this on the front end using the preview page link, just zoom in a little bit. And if we inspect that, you'll see that our links have been generated dynamically. We've got /movie/babes in Toyland here. On the next one, we've got /movie/babes in Toyland, not the director's cut. On this one, we've got /movie/the night before. On this one, we've got /movie/the Prince of Pennsylvania, etc. So we've confirmed that these links are being generated dynamically, which are going to take us to our dynamic movie page. Now, we do need to make sure that these links actually look like links. So I'm going to press S on the anchor tag for the style tab, and I am going to choose Lime 700 for the color. And I'm going to make sure that the text is underlined. So I'm going to expand the text section, decoration, line, underline. Now on the UL, I'm just going to space out this list a little bit. I'm going to make sure it's display flex, and I'm going to give it a little gap of 0.5 rems, just so there's a little bit more space for the links to breathe. So now we've got our list of movies from the first API call. We're ready to create our second page, which will be dynamic based on the link that the user has navigated to from the home page. So if we head over to the project sidebar, we're going to click this plus button next to pages to create a new page. And we're going to call this movie. Let's click create. I'm going to delete the default div from this page and add another main element from the HTML catalog. And I'm going to show you how to copy and paste the CSS from our first main container over to this one. So if we go back to the home page, click on the main element. Here we have the style panel. I'm going to click on copy properties down here. I'm going to go back to the movie page, select the main element, have the style panel visible, and press paste. Easy as that. So now it's time to set up our second API call for this dynamic page. So go back to GitHub and then copy the URL for the Whoa by Movies API, which is /wows/random. And then back in the editor, click plus next to API, and we're going to paste the URL in again. And we're going to name this API Whoa by Movie. So you'll see already again, Nordcraft has split out that URL, showing you the separate path parameters. So next, to make this page dynamic, we need to create a dynamic path parameter for the page. So click up back here for your page settings, and we're going to add a new path. Now the name of this parameter is going to be name because we're using the movie name. And we're going to click param because it's going to be dynamic. It's going to come from the URL. Now we'll need to add a test value in for development purposes, and the easiest one to add in is the %20, which is a space, matrix. And now we're going to use this name path parameter in the API call. So click on the Whoa by Movie API again and click the Parameters tab. Now we're going to add a query parameter by pressing the plus button. And this parameter is going to be called movie. And then to get that dynamic value coming in from the page path, click the FX button, click the calculator, and find the URL parameter name. And you'll see the test value that we specified just now is the matrix, the %20 matrix, and that is automatically populated here. You'll also see automatically that the API has been called and we have our data right here. We have the year of the movie, the title, the release date, the director, the character, the duration, and loads more. So our API is working as expected, and we're getting in that dynamic data based on the path parameter. So now it's time to render that data on the page. So this page is going to have two sections. We're going to have the top section with the video in and the bottom section with the movie poster and the movie metadata in. So I'm going to add two section HTML tags. Click on main, press I for the catalog, and let's search for section. And I'm just going to copy and paste that section. Every page needs an H1, so the first thing we're going to do is add an H1, press I for the catalog, search for H1, and this is going to be a dynamic H1 based on the data coming back from the API. Now, there are a number of ways you can display this data, but I'm going to use the formula editor to concatenate a couple of values. So I'm going to click on the text node and go over to the FX button on the right. I'm going to use concatenate. And we're going to concatenate the movie title and then an opening bracket, the movie year, and then a closing bracket. So we need 4 fields to concatenate. The first one is going to be the movie data 0 movie. The next one is just going to be a string opening bracket. The next one is going to be movie data 0 year, and then we're going to add a closing bracket and make sure to add a space before the opening bracket. Let's close that and let's just turn this H1 black so we can see it. Excellent. We have the matrix 1999. Next, we're going to add a video element into this section. So click on section, press I for the catalog, and let's find the video element and press A for the attribute tab. There's a number of attributes we're going to need to add for this video element, but the first one is the source attribute. So click on the FX button and let's get the source of the video from the API. So we've got Whoa by movie, data 0, and then we've got video, and let's choose a 720p. And there it is. There's the video. We'll style that in a moment, but first of all, we need to add some extra attributes. We're going to add the loop attribute, and that's going to be false. We're going to add the poster attribute, which is also going to be false. We're going to add the preload attribute, which is also going to be false. We're going to add the autoplay attribute, which is also going to be false. And we're going to add the controls attribute, which is going to be true. And then we see the controls appear there. For styling the video, we'll press S for the Style tab, and we're just going to set a width of 100%. For those rounded corners, I've also set a border radius here of just 1 rem, but it's up to you how you style your video. The next element in this section is the quote of the Whoa and the timestamp in which it was said. So on that section HTML element, press I to add a new element, and we're going to search for a paragraph. And in here, rather than concatenating 3 bits of text inside the formula editor, we're actually going to use 3 text nodes and concatenate it kind of in line. So I'm going to copy that text node and paste it 2 more times. This first text node, I'm going to go over to the formula button here. We're going to get the Whoa by movie, data 0, and we're going to find the full line. So I am actually going to concatenate this quote with quotation marks. So I'm going to find the concatenate formula. I'm going to add a quotation mark, and I'm going to add another quotation mark. I'm just going to reorder this by dragging it. So now we have quotation, the full quote, quotation mark. The next text node is just going to be space was said at space. And the last text node is going to be the timestamp of when that whoa was said. So whoa by movie, data 0, timestamp. Let's make sure we can see this paragraph by going to the Style tab or pressing S on that paragraph. And let's just make that black as well. Excellent. Let's just lay out this section a little bit nicer. Let's go to the Style tab on that section. Let's choose Display Flex. Let's give it a gap of maybe 1 rem. And let's center everything. Perfect. And if we press T inside the editor to go into test mode, we can also play this video as well to test it out. Excellent. All right, that's the first section done. I'm going to close that section up and click on the next section where we're going to work on the movie poster. So the first element we're going to add into this section is an image. So let's add an image using I to open the catalog. Let's search for image or IMG, which I always tend to do. Let's press enter, and let's press A to go to the attributes tab for that image. We're going to add the source of the image from the API. So we're going to click on the FX button next to source. We're going to click on Whoa by movie, data 0, and we're going to find the poster. And there it is. Beautiful. Now we don't have any height and width attributes yet on this image, so we're going to add width and height attributes. The width for these images is 600 and the height is 900. We're going to add some alt text to this movie poster by using data from the API. Click on the FX button next to alt. Click on Whoa by movie, data 0 movie, and I'm going to concatenate that with a space and poster. Next, we're going to create the overlay of the movie metadata on top of the movie poster. Clicking on that second section element, we're going to insert a div. And inside that, we're going to add 3 paragraphs. So open the element catalog, search for paragraph, and I'm going to copy and paste 2 more. In the first paragraph, we're going to get the director. I'm going to copy this text node, and in the first text node, I'm going to type directed by : with a space. In the second text node, I'm going to use the FX button to get the director of the movie from the API. So Whoa by movie, data 0, director. Now we won't see this overlaid on the movie poster just yet. What I am going to do is I'm going to select this div and go to the Style tab and just change the color to black so we can see that text that we're working with here. So we've got directed by and the director's names. In the next text node, we're going to look at the release date. So I'm going to copy again this text node and do a similar thing. So release date in here with a space after it. I'm going to click on the next text node and use the FX button to get the release date from the API. So Whoa by movie, data 0, and somewhere there'll be the release date. Now, this date doesn't look very good for presentational purposes, so we're going to format this date. So what we can do here is click on the plus button, and we're going to, first of all, get the date from string, because that's just a string. It's not like a real date object. And this is going to give us more of an accurate date. The next thing I'm going to do is use the format date formula. Now, this takes a couple of options. I'm in the UK, so my locale that I want to format the date for is ENGB. And the options that the format date accepts needs to be an object. So to do that, we can create an object on the fly by searching for object. And the key for one of these options that we need is date style, and I want to choose full. And the output here is Wednesday, 31st of March, 1999, which is much nicer than just showing 1999-0331. On the Nordcraft documentation, docs.nordcraft.com, there is a full reference for all of these formulas that we're using. If you go down to the left menu, right down to the bottom and click on references, you can open that and click on formulas. And so you'll see here we use the format date formula, and these are the parameters it takes, and this is the output. So anything else you need when you're working in Nordcraft in the formula editor, you can find the references on the docs. Finally, we're going to add the movie duration into this little metadata section. Again, I'm going to copy and paste this text node. And in this first one, I'm going to type movie duration with a space at the end. And the next text node we're going to get from the API, Whoa by movie, data 0, movie duration. And there we go. There is our movie metadata. Now let's just style it so it's over the movie poster as it is in production right now. With that div selected and the style panel visible, we're going to go down to this layout section here and we're going to click on position absolute. That's immediately going to bring that out of the flow of the content and put it on top of the movie poster. We're going to press this little button to expand here and find the inset option. And we're going to set the bottom to 50% so it's centered on top of that movie poster. Scrolling down a little bit more, we're going to add a background color, and this one's going to be lime 400, again, just a CSS variable. And we're going to do something funky with the border radius. You can set individual border radii by using this button here. And we're going to set the top right to 1 rem and the bottom right to 1 rem. Finally, all we need is a little bit of padding. So I'm going to set 0.5 rem on the top and bottom and the left and right padding. One last thing we need to add so that users can go back and forth to the home page and between movie pages is a link back to home. So clicking on that top main element, we're going to add another element, just a link. We're going to move that all the way to the top. And this is going to say back to all movies. So let's edit the text node for that. The attributes, press A for the attributes tab. We're actually going to go back to slash here and then make sure that we can see that link by changing the color to, let's do the link color lime 700. And let's give it an underline text decoration. Perfect. So now let's preview the page. We have the link right at the top that says back to all movies. And now let's click on Toy Story 4. We have the Whoa from Toy Story 4. Whoa. Very short and sweet. We can go back to all movies. We have Sweet November. Here's the Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's one of my favorites. Okay, and so finally, the last thing I want to do is show you how I animated Keanu's head on the home page. Back on the home page with Keanu's head selected and the style panel visible, I'm first of all going to add a transform to slightly rotate the head. So we're going to select rotate here, and the angle I want to rotate it is 16 degrees. Perfect. Next, we're going to go down to the animation area and click the plus button. The animation editor gives you some predefined animation effects for your fun and choosing. So I'm going to just choose the rotate first of all, and I'm going to play this to show you how it works. There you go. Little rotating head, very cool, but I want him to nod side to side like this. So I'm going to add some extra keyframes and change the value of the rotation on those different keyframes. First of all, the duration of my animation is actually just going to be 1 second. So I'm going to change that there. And then I'm going to add a keyframe at 2.5 seconds. Press the keyframe button. At 0.5 seconds, press the keyframe button. at 0.75 seconds, press the keyframe button, and then keep that one at the end on 1 second. For the 0-second keyframe, we're going to set the rotation value to that transform value we just set up. And then we're going to go to the next keyframe and we're going to tell him that we don't want him to be rotated whatsoever. The next keyframe is going to be minus 16 degrees. The next keyframe is going to be 0 degrees. And finally, we're going to return back to the 16 degrees. We want to make sure that this animation runs infinitely. Currently, there is only one iteration, and we can press this little loop button right there to make sure that it runs infinitely, and it will go on forever and ever and ever. And then if we press the preview link here, we have Keanu moving side to side very funkily. And now I think we're ready to release and publish this app. So back in the editor, we're just going to click on View Changes. As you can see, we've added a home page, a movie page, and we can just add a commit message, initial commit, added home page and movie page, and then we can just publish. And that is it. Again, what's really useful to do is to make sure that you do rename your projects rather than ending up with a bajillion projects named Untitled. So this is Keanu's site and the description can be whoa. Let's update that. And you're done. That was lesson 2. You just built an app in Nordcraft using data from an API. You also created a dynamic page using a path parameter that was dynamic based on API results. And I hope you had a great time. In lesson 3, we're going to build a Pomodoro timer, and that really goes deep in how to use some of the more advanced features of the formula editor and workflows. I'll see you there.